no deal unless sanctions are lifted immediately on the very day the deal goes into effect. And here at home, several prominent Democrats are supporting a bill that would require congressional approval before the president could even make a deal. The White House, not so happy.
What does the White House say to you in terms of the pushback against you and your efforts for this bill?
Well, they don't like the bill, and they don't like me being on the bill, and they've made that very plain.
Is it possible the president's deal will be destroyed by his own party? Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is David Tafuri, a former Obama campaign foreign policy advisor, and Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union and a former political director for President George W. Bush. Mr. Tafuri, let me start with you. Wow. I have a list of 9 Democrat senators. Chuck Schumer, who might be the Senate minority leader, is signed on the Corker bill saying, hey, wait a minute, we want to say, but you say that's not the right way the deal should go down.
Well, I think there are a lot of Democrats who believe Congress should have a role in approving of this agreement. And in this case, nearly all of the Republicans in the Senate agree with Senator Corker, who's pushed this bill forward to make sure the Senate has a role. I believe the Republicans will get enough Democrats to make it veto-proof. That means 13 Democrats have to join the 54 senators. But then the question is, if a final agreement is reached on June 30th, will Congress approve of that agreement? I think that's closer, and I think ultimately President Obama will get the agreement passed.
Before I go to Matt, David, so you think if the 13 or 14 Democrats, join with the Republicans and they do have a veto-proof bill, you think the president should veto a bill put on his desk that says give Congress a shot at looking at this?
Well, I think that's up to the president. I mean, the president really wants to make this deal happen, so part of putting the pressure on Congress would be to try and veto any bill that gives them a role and gives them the ability to stop the deal. But no, I think Congress should have a role in this deal. We need to make sure that we have a very strong agreement with Iran. It's right to have a nuclear agreement, but it has to be strong, and Congress should be putting pressure on the president and on Iran to make sure that deal is strong.
Matt, what about when the supreme leader of Iran says, hey, the deal that the Americans were presented the day after the negotiations finished, he says that was not the real deal. They had a completely different idea of the deal. Should we not give Congress at least a 60-day, which is what they're looking for, a 60-day window to look at what's really the deal before they sign off on it?
I mean, come on, we're not buying a house here or a car. This is a very complicated deal. We're all talking about a deal that doesn't even exist. We, of course, should be able to see the fine print on what this means. And, of course, the mullahs in Iran are saying all these sanctions have to be lifted because there's $120 billion in frozen assets they want to get their hands on. You know what they're going to do with that money? They're going to rebuild their economy, and they're also going to continue to fund terrorism across the region and across the globe. This is incredibly serious, and for the president to actually try to once again go it alone without working with Congress is a huge mistake. And in this instance, thank God, there are 9 Democrats. Charles Schumer is joining them, and others who are saying enough is enough. Israel is our best ally, probably on the globe, certainly in the region, and we ought to stand with Israel.
Schumer, Tim Kaine, Bill Nelson of Florida, Menendez, New Jersey, Blumenthal, Connecticut, and a handful of others, Mr. Tafuri, those are some fairly influential Democrats. Why would the president decide to go against that group?
Well, again, because he really wants to get this deal passed at all costs, and he doesn't want to have the congressional obstacle. Another thing that's really going to matter here is public opinion. Public opinion is very interesting. In general, the public does support a nuclear deal with Iran, but the public opinion polling also
David, do you realize what you just said? Do you realize what you just said? I asked you why he would do that, and you said because he really wants it. Now, Matt, the president may want it, but what do the American people want? Isn't that what this is all about?
I have 5 little girls, and there are a lot of times they want things too, and I tell them no. And the American people want to deal with Iran in the sense that they don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. What they don't understand fully is that what Obama is doing here is actually lifting sanctions, just like he did with Cuba, in a unilateral fashion, because this is what his foreign policy is. I am going to make friends with everyone around the globe. The problem is with Iran is that they will then get all these assets, and they will now have the money to put their nuclear weapons program and their terrorism funding on high speed. and that is incredibly dangerous. We might never be able to get back what we'll lose if he's able to push forward on this.
David, during the negotiation, the Supreme Leader of Iran called for death to Americans. We still somehow walked away and said we have a deal, and then within days, that same Supreme Leader says the deal that the Americans think they got, that's not the deal we know. Why would we even bother negotiating with these people?
Well, look, we talk about Congress could block this deal. The Supreme Leader could block this deal, too, and he very well may. But my guess is ultimately he won't.
The Supreme Leader, did you see the reception that the Iranian foreign minister got when he went back to Tehran? He was a rock star in Tehran.
Yeah, I think ultimately, that's what I'm saying. The Supreme Leader and the President of Iran are not going to block this deal because they're never going to get better terms than this. So they'll probably ultimately support it. This is rhetoric by them.
What about it, Matt? Who's got the better deal? Look, we had Iran in the corner. We had them painted in the corner. Their economy was on its heels. They were begging to be let out. And what did? We let them out first and decided to negotiate later.
That's exactly right. And look, there's been a bipartisan consensus in this country on the major foreign policy questions since World War II. You know, on all the major foreign policy questions, sure, there are disagreements, but on the big questions of our security, we work together, both parties. The president has done something really unique here. He's got every Republican in Congress against him on this deal, and he's got a growing list of Democrats against him on this deal. He's actually got a bipartisan consensus against his type of foreign policy of what he's doing in Iran and other places. And I think look, I'm not for him politically, but he's our president. And on these types of national security questions, we want him to stand up and do America proud. And what he's doing in Iran is a disgrace.
And David, what he would have to do to make this deal, he's have to bypass a deal that Congress put together themselves. He'd have to break that. I'm not even sure he can legally do that.
Well, no, he has to get Congress to approve of the deal if Congress passes a law that allows them to approve or not approve the deal. So there's a couple more steps here. The president is working furiously to get Democrats on board with either opposing Corker's legislation or ultimately approving this agreement.
Looks like it's going in the opposite direction, David. We're going to have to leave it right there, David and Matt.